Hello everybody, my name is Brandon. Welcome back to Cinefessions, where we talk all things media. So I'm here today with the third episode of Book versus Movie. So if you are one of my new followers this year, one of my new subscribers, you probably don't remember this series because I did like 2 episodes of it in maybe the middle of 2020, and then I never ended up going back to it. But I figured this would be a good opportunity to revive this series. And let me also mention that this won't be a typical book versus movie episode. So the first one, I talked about Jurassic Park, where I compared the Michael Crichton book with the Steven Spielberg movie. And then the second one, I did The Shining, where I compared the Stephen King book with the, actually not the Kubrick film, mostly. I talked about it a little bit, but really it was the miniseries that they did after the fact. This time around, though, I'm going to be talking some nonfiction. So I recently read Alfred Hitchcock and the Making of Psycho, written by Stephen Rebello. This is a 1990 book about the making of the famous, wonderful masterpiece that is Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho from 1960. And then after I finished that, I decided, you know what? I have the DVD. It's literally just the DVD. I bought this when I worked at Family Video. We would just have, like, the cases would disappear. And so, or like with the cover art in them. And so we would just have the DVDs themselves. We would sell those for like 10 for $1. So that's how I ended up picking this one up. Unfortunately, I don't have it any other way. So I will have to, eventually, upgrade that to Blu-ray or whatever the case is. But that's how I was able to watch that. And so, the film is from 2012. So it came out 22 years after the original book. And so what I want to do today is talk about basically how these two compare and contrast. Typically, I will tell you guys which one does it better, but that's not really going to be the case here. This is really a book and movie as opposed to a book versus movie, but I figured it would fit under this moniker either way. So hopefully you guys are excited about this one. I am really excited to talk about it. So if you do enjoy this video, please give it a like down below. That really helps me out. But with that said, let's not waste any more time at all. Let's dive right in to Book versus Movie Episode 3, all about the making of Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. Normally in these episodes, this is the point where I talk about spoilers because these are typically spoiler filled, but in this instance, that doesn't really apply here because we're talking about nonfiction book, and it is kind of a fictional movie, but it's based on nonfiction. And so there's not really spoilers here. I won't tell you how the end of Hitchcock goes in case you don't know the relationship between he and his wife. And so I won't talk about exactly how things end, but otherwise, there's not really spoilers. If you know anything about the making of Psycho, you already know all of, probably what I'm going to talk about here. And that's not really what my focus is going to be today. I want to talk about what these two sources of media provided me as the reader and as the viewer. What fascinated me most about both of these pieces of work is that the book and the movie are really doing different things. The book from 1990, written by Stephen Rebello, it is entitled Alfred Hitchcock and the Making of Psycho. This is really a account of the entire making of Psycho. So you're going to start out with the kind of the concept. The movie he worked on before is mentioned a little bit. Go from concept, how it is essentially turned down at first, and then Hitchcock says, you know what? I'll fund it myself. He was on his last contract with that studio, and so the studio had said, well, if you're going to fund it, go for it, essentially laughing in his face while doing it because they had no faith in this project whatsoever. And so you go from that aspect all the way through the making of the film itself, and then at the end you talk about kind of the aftermath. You hear about the marketing aspect that he did, which was just brilliant. He sent like this big thick booklet on all of essentially the rules in order for all these theater houses to show Psycho. Of course, the big most infamous thing is that there was nobody admitted once the movie started. Like they, were told to lock the doors, do not let anybody in after it starts. Because of course with Psycho, it's kind of like Scream, where you have this main character who you think you're following, and then things happen, and that's not necessarily who you're following. I guess I didn't even think about spoilers for Psycho, but if you're watching this, you've probably already seen the film Psycho, and I would definitely recommend doing that if you haven't. But anyway, so that's really what you're getting with the book, is a tell-all of from start to finish, and then the aftermath. And of course, he goes on to make The Birds, which they touch on a little bit, but it basically ends there. It's kind of like, well, Psycho was his peak, and then it kind of, went downhill with The Birds and, until his death. But with the movie, it is a completely different beast. With the 2012 film, though, what you're getting is really the story of the relationship between Alfred Hitchcock, who is played marvelously by Anthony Hopkins, and his wife Alma, who is played just as marvelously by Helen Mirren. They are amazing together. They have such good chemistry, the appropriate type of chemistry that's required for this, because obviously, not obviously, you may or may not know, but during the making of this movie, there is a kind of a divide between the two. Hitchcock is well known for treating his leading blondes in a very personal way, where he doesn't really do that with the other actors. And, the movie shows how that affects Alma, who is really kind of his right-hand person in this. If he's the director, she's always right there to kind of oversee what he's doing. And she is the first person that he always turned to for advice, what works, what doesn't. She really acted as kind of an AD, an assistant director most of the time, though I don't think she was ever credited as such, but that's really what she did behind the scenes. She was who he trusted most in the world to go to. And so with the movie, you really get, at the beginning, you see how he treats his leading blonde, who in this case is Scarlett Johansson, who is fantastic. I love ScarJo. She's one of my favorites. And so I think she does a really good job with this role here as well. So we really start to see the blossoming relationship between him and his leading blonde, which frankly, Hitchcock was known for essentially becoming obsessed with his leading ladies in his films, and it's no different with Psycho. And so we start to see how that affects Alma in a really good scene at the beginning of the film here. And from there, there's another great scene where Alma is getting all dressed up. She looks beautiful. She's going out for dinner with her author friend, who is the writer of, I think he did like Strangers on a Train, I believe, is one of the Hitchcock films he wrote. And so she's going out to dinner with him as a friend. And, she asks Hitchcock, or Hitch, as she always calls him, how she looks. And he's like, acceptable or fine or whatever it is. But he doesn't use the word beautiful ever, and he does when he's talking with his leading ladies. And so clearly this is having some effect on their relationship. And that just progresses as he becomes more and more obsessed with not only the leading lady, but with this movie, because they have their own financial backing behind this. It's very important that it succeeds, because if not, that could affect their retirement. That could affect them greatly. And so there is just so much pressure that this film needs to work out, which of course, Psycho goes on to be one of the most successful films ever, especially of his tenure. It's definitely his most successful film in terms of financial or box office finances. So there's almost a catch-22 here with the movie, because with Hitch ignoring Alma, she turns more toward her author friend, and they start having more of a, I don't want to call it an intimate relationship, but just a deeper relationship. And that upsets Hitch, who then turns less to Alma when it comes to what he needs to do with the movie. So they start splitting apart a little bit, and, things kind of escalate with the relationship with the author, and things escalate with the movie just not going the way he wants it to go at all. And so that rift between them is notable, and it's big. And that is not at all what you hear about with the book. The book is much more matter of fact. It is, X, Y, and Z happens, whereas the film is taking you more on a narrative journey. But the film is also based on reality. Researching a little bit, I did find out that this relationship that's played up here was actually something that happened in real life. And so this divide between them, it may have been played up a bit for the film, but it's definitely something that was prevalent. So it's based on reality, which is fantastic. Like, it was fascinating to see their relationship, because as someone who knew virtually nothing about Alma at all, I really enjoyed this, because learning how these two interacted, I had no idea that she was so instrumental in every film that he did. And so it's just really fascinating to watch their relationship, from the beginning, and then kind of grow apart. And then what happens at the end, I think, is just, it's done so well. So these are all of the reasons why I think that both of these are essential if you are a Hitchcock fan. Specifically, if you love the movie Psycho, I think like the behind the scenes of this movie was fascinating, simply because of the money game that was going on, and then the making of. There wasn't like a ton of drama with the making of the film, but it was interesting to see how it all came together. How the score, which is now, one of the more infamous parts of the film, how that eventually gets brought into it is very fascinating, because you would think that was something that was like planned from the beginning, but it wasn't at all. And so the way that's brought in, I think, is fascinating as well, which I've said that word probably 100 times already, but I can't help it. I found everything about this super interesting. I learned so much from both of these. But again, they are two completely different things with different goals in mind, which makes sense because they were created 22 years apart. I'm sure we learned different things, new things in those 22 years that Stephen Rebello, who also helped write the screenplay for this, that he wanted to include in the movie that he may not have been able to do in the original book from 1990. The book is going to give you a wonderful take of kind of point to point what happened behind the scenes for the making of this film, which if you are a film nerd, if you love Psycho, if you love Hitchcock, if that sounds interesting to you, then definitely check out the book. I think it's really well written. It is entertaining. It's not dry at all. I had just finished reading the making of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which was written by Gunnar Hansen, Leatherface himself. And though I would give the nod to that one if I was comparing the two, just because you can't compare, the actor playing Leatherface writes a book on TCM. You can't really compare that to a third party looking back 30 years at the making of a movie. It's just not the same thing. And so if I was, had to pick one, I would go with the Leatherface or the Gunnar Hansen book. But that's not to take anything away from Alfred Hitchcock in the making of Psycho, because I didn't know any of that behind the scenes. Now, if you're someone who knows a ton about Psycho and kind of the process that it went through, you might not get as much out of it as I did. But for someone who is, loves the movie, but that's really all my experience with it, I learned a ton. I thought it was interesting from beginning to end. I consumed it super quick because I wanted to see how it was all going to play out. I think the marketing aspect of it alone is worth a listen, because Hitchcock was brilliant when it came to the marketing of this film, and that's really what drove sales. And so I think that aspect alone makes the book worth listening to, or that's what it was an audiobook is how I did it, but it makes the book worth reading. And then on the film side, this is really for someone looking to be entertained. No, it is not going to give you a point-by-point take on the making of the movie. So if you're looking for that, you need the book. But if you're looking to be entertained and to learn more about that relationship between Alma and Hitchcock, the relationship between Hitchcock and his leading ladies, the story of, it really shows well how much of a burden, I guess I'll say, the financial aspect of the film was on Hitchcock and his wife. And so I think the film does a really good job of playing that, of showing that. And so if you want to be entertained, if that's what you're looking for a more narrative story that has a beginning, a middle, and an end, that has tension and drama in the middle, then you definitely want to check out the film. It's not going to be for everybody, because it's not going to be for the person looking for kind of specifics about making of the film, but it's for someone that's looking to be entertained that is also interested in Psycho or Hitchcock or just the world of Hollywood back in that time. I ended up giving both of these a 4 out of 5 stars because I think they are both great. I loved the book. I am so happy I decided to spend a credit on it on Audible because it was just made for me. Like, as a film nerd and someone who always is looking to learn more about the behind the scenes, that was awesome. I loved it. And then the film, I think, is just so well acted. It's well directed. It tells an entertaining story. So I loved both of them. Like I said, I ended up giving them both 4 out of 5 stars, and these are companion pieces. You really shouldn't have one without the other. That's how I look at it. The book is amazing, the film is amazing, and they both combine to give you a fuller view of what this world was that Hitchcock was going through and Alma were going through to make this incredible film that is now one of the more iconic films in Hollywood's history. So when it comes to book versus movie, which one would I choose? I can't pick. They're both fantastic. And so I recommend you read the book and then you watch the movie. That's the order I did it in. And I think that's the best way to go because you're going to get the details and all the facts from the book. And then you're just going to be entertained by the film. At least I was. I think Helen Mirren and Anthony Hopkins just played off each other perfectly. They are so great together. And so I loved these, and I definitely recommend both of them to you if any of what I just talked about sounds interesting at all. All right, so that is going to do it for Book versus Movie episode 3. I really hope you guys enjoyed this one. I loved talking about these. I've been waiting to do this for a while now, so I'm so happy I finally sat down and was able to talk about them because I had such a blast with both of these. But let me know down in the comments below. Have you read the book? Have you watched the movie? Did you love them? Did you hate them? Let me know what your thoughts are. And hey, if you're planning to check out one or both of these now that you've listened to me babble for this amount of time, let me know that down below. Or if you're still planning to pass, tell me that too. But I think these are definitely worth the time. Also, if you guys have any other recommendations for making of books when it comes to cinema, let me know down below. I'm always looking for something good and new in that realm. And then if you know of any biopics of film actors, directors, producers, whatever, let me know those down in the comments down below as well. I always appreciate all of your support. So whatever comments you're leaving, I am happy to read them and reply to them. So let me know all your thoughts down in that comment section down below. As always, if you guys did enjoy this video, please give it a like down below. That really does help me out. And like I always say, I don't just talk books or movies. I talk all things media, be it books, movies, collectibles, graphic novels, manga. If it's media related, I'm interested in it. And if you are too, you might consider subscribing. All right, guys, so that's going to do it for today. I just want to say thank you all so much for watching, and I want to encourage you to consume some media today. I'll catch you next time.